Well, I have to say it's very nice to be here with you. I haven't spoken actually to groups of people for the last 3 or 4 years. So and then to do it on a computer like this is the first time for me. And so just be patient with me because, again, I prefer to speak to groups live when I'm going to speak. And simply because I'm one of those guys who thinks that we use social media just a little bit too much. And I think we spend more time on our computers and on our phones than we do with each other. And so Barbara had mentioned I took over a house in Brooklyn here called the St. Francis home. And I have 8 guys that live in this house who need help. And they're not only, like monetarily poor, but mostly spiritually poor. The guys that we get at the house, they're great guys. But they're young, they're in their 20s, 18 and up. And one of the rules that I have in the house is you can't take your phone to the dinner table. We have dinner together every night. This is what keeps us, really, really tight, really together. And we live in a community style. But for the most part, dinner, I think, is extremely important because this is where we interact with each other. What type of day we had, what type of week we had, what type of problems we have. And I don't like to be interrupted, by a phone. But every once in a while, one of the guys will bring one of his friends over, and I can see through our house, the way it's set up, I could see in the kitchen, and one of the guys is telling the new guy who's coming for dinner, don't bring your phone to the table. And he doesn't understand why. I don't get why, because Joe does not allow cell phones at the table. Well, anyway, he brought his cell phone to the table, and it rang while we were having dinner, and everybody at the house looked at me to see what I was going to do. And I said to the young man, I said, could you do me a favor? Could you FaceTime whoever that is? I'd like to know who's at my table. And he was shocked. It was his girlfriend. And I said, no, I really want to see who she is, and I would really like to meet her, and maybe even invite her over here, or turn the phone off. You can't have both. It's one or the other. You're either with us, here, communicating, looking at each other's eyes. See, I think one of the mistakes we're making is that we're not looking into each other's eyes. And we were made to look into each other's eyes. You probably heard this before. Your eyes are the window to your soul. And so there's a space between us that is no longer, it's become part of our life, a space between us. So it's really, although, it's sort of like, I guess the best way I can explain this in my own thoughts is that people who are very, very far away can be very, very close to us. And people who are very, very close to us when you're on the phone can be very, very far away. And I think that's a big mistake. And so, again, I'm only saying this because it's the first time I'm doing a talk like this on a computer. And I think it's also a great idea to bring a lot of people who are far away together. But I also think that we should all think about how much time we spend in social media and how much time we spend with each other. It's not the way God created us. So I could give you a couple of stories that I learned working with the poor that may help you. I don't know. I have 8 guys that live at the house now, and most of them come from very dysfunctional families. The guys are great. It's the families that are messed up. And so in order to add some order to their lives, as God does everything in order, they come completely disordered. I mean, most of the guys the tables that they had in their house was to put a jacket on or a coat or something, not to eat dinner on, So bringing people together over a meal is extremely, extremely important. And you know that here because you do that after Mass on Sunday, which is a beautiful thing. But everything that I ever learned working with the poor, I learned from the poor. There's really no book for it. It's not the kind of thing you could go out and read upon and actually understand it and feel what they feel. This is my anniversary of being in Brooklyn working at the St. Francis House. And it's November, it's 33 years. And I was thinking today, what could I say to the younger group, working with the poor. Well, this is what I did before I came to the St. Francis House in Brooklyn. I wanted to understand the people and feel what the people were feeling. I didn't grow up poor. I grew up in an average middle-class neighborhood in Long Island. And so there's always food on the table. I had mom and dad. I had 3 other brothers. It was a nice, cushy little life, But coming into Brooklyn was new turf for me. As a matter of fact, I would never come into Brooklyn unless I was going to be on a mission. And I realized when I was invited to come here, that's exactly what it was. It was a mission. If you're going to be on a mission, you have to know who your audience is and who you're going to be working with. And you have to have a great understanding of them. One of the things that I did was I fasted for 3 days on bread and water. I honestly wanted to know what it felt like to be hungry. I mean, I was never hungry. And so I was going to be around people who were hungry. Now, my mother taught me something at a very early age, which I always took to heart. She said, you could never understand a person that's hungry if you have a full stomach. Makes perfect sense. And so I fasted for 3 days. The first day was difficult. The second day was extremely difficult. And the third day, God gave me the understanding. It was difficult, but it wasn't as difficult as the first day. I can't explain to you why. I don't even know why. But God was speaking to me through that. And I was beginning to understand the population of the people that I was going to be working with. And this takes place in the second commandment, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And if you're going to come to the St. Francis House, that's one of the things that I tell the guys. If you don't understand the second commandment, you will hear, because your brother comes before you do. Your neighbor comes before you do. And I can promise you this much. If you want joy in your life, this is what I learned in my experience, is that you give more than you take. Now, joy is completely different than being happy. I'm happy I had a good meal tonight, but that's not joyful. That happiness goes away. The joy in your heart comes from helping other people. For me, working with the poor, every day is Christmas. It really is amazing. I mean, in order to love them, you have to really understand where they're coming from and why they do the things they do. And when you do that, forgiveness also enters into your heart. When you know and feel that a person is hurting, and they say something really negative to you, it's very easy to forgive them, because you know that. I'll give you an example. I'm walking down the street on Manhattan Avenue, and I know back in the day there was a lot of homeless people right on Greenpoint Avenue. And I was walking with the guys, and 3 of the guys, they wanted to go to McDonald's. I don't eat McDonald's. And they knew if they asked me enough times, I probably would give in, which I did. But before we went into McDonald's, Tommy, who was sitting at Greenpoint Avenue, was there. And I said, guys, before we go in, let's just see if Tommy needs anything to eat. And so I go up to Tommy and I go, how you doing, Tommy? And he just looks at me and he's really angry. I go, are you hungry? And he gives me the finger. And I said, you're hungry, I can tell. I'm from Brooklyn too. I know exactly what that means. I said, why don't I get you one of those ham sandwiches that you like? And he starts cursing at me. But he was hungry. He was really hungry. I don't know the last time this guy ate. And I said, listen, I'm going to go across the street to the deli, get you that ham sandwich that you like. Don't leave. Last time I did this, you left. I was stuck with a ham sandwich. I don't even eat ham sandwiches. And then you know what he yells out? And don't forget the coffee. I said, I'll get the coffee, and now how you like it. I went across the street and I got it. And one of the boys that was with me said, Joe, how is it that you're letting this guy get away with, like, abusing you? He's just totally abusing you. And I said, Matthew, he's not abusing me. He's not mad at me. He's mad at the world. I said, who knows what happened to this poor guy? We do know this, that we can go into McDonald's and order anything we want. we're rich. He goes, what do you mean we're rich? We live at the St. Francis house. We're poor. I said, no, Matthew. We can order anything we want. We're rich. He can't. He doesn't have a dime in his pocket. We go back to Tommy. I bring him a sandwich. And I go, here's your sandwich, Tom. And he goes, did you get the coffee? And I go, hey, I got your coffee right here. Now, by that time, I had an audience with the three guys with me, and I'm trying to, teach by example. And so, to make a long story short, we're kind of feeling pretty holy at that moment, And I said, hey, Tommy, did you pray today? And he looks at me and he goes, how do you think I got the sandwich? Mm-hmm. True story. True story. And so you never know really, what's going on in these people's lives. But I do know this. He had a tremendous amount of faith. He was asking God. God used us. And God wants to use you. He wants to use you. You have to let him in. You have to let him in. As we all know, God is a perfect gentleman, and he's not going to come and break your door down. If you feel an inkling that God is calling you to work with the poor, jump at it. It's an opportunity of a lifetime. I mean, you will learn so much from the poor. Your life will be so fulfilled. I mean, how many young people say, what's life all about? Well, it's to give more than you take. And I think I know why God gave us the poor. It's for us to take care of them. What a great opportunity to be a witness. What a great opportunity to have forgiveness. What a great and God will also fill your heart with a tremendous amount of joy. At the St. Francis house, we have to clean out our pantry every once in a while. And so at one time I said to the guys, I want to take everything out of here and go give it to St. Anthony's to the shelter down the block before Thanksgiving. And they kind of looked at me and they were like, what are we taking this food out of here? We need this. And I said, Raphael, this food's been sitting here for 6 months. We're not going to eat it. We're never going to eat it. In 6 months, this food's still going to be here. Let's go give it to somebody who can actually use it before it goes bad. Anyway, they disagreed with me. We got rid of the food. They came down. We gave it to St. Anthony's. The next day, we had a knock on the door. Now, we were very poor in those days. We had a knock on the door. Somebody pulls up in a brand new BMW, which in those days, we didn't see many BMWs in Greenpoint. And he goes, are you Joe? I said, yes, I am. He goes, my name is Glenn. He goes, I heard about the work that you're doing through the friars. I brought you a couple of things I think you guys could use. Do you have anybody here to help us bring the food in? And I said, yeah, sure. Now, back in those days, if we had a bottle of Coke on the table, it must have been Easter or Christmas because, again, it's not the kind of thing we would spend money on, just the essentials. We go outside, and he has these gigantic coolers full of steaks, pork chops, soda, you name it, everything that we can't afford came into the house. The freezer was full, the refrigerator was full, and the pantry was full. It was just him and his wife that came. And it's the first time I met the guy. And I said, Glenn, I just don't know what to say. Thank you so much. When he left, everybody was rejoicing because, wow, we were going to eat steaks that night. But for some reason, the guys didn't believe that God sent that food. They thought it was a setup, like I was getting rid of the food, and then we were going to replenish with all the... I said, no, you don't understand. That was a gift. That was a gift from God. And so this is why I always say, the more you give, the more you receive back. It's like even in your prayer. I mean, if I'm praying for peace, it's only because I want to give that peace to others. It's the only reason. If God puts peace in my heart, I pray that I can return that peace to you. If he gives me joy, I pray that I can give that joy back to you. If he gives us food, I hope that I can bring that food back to you. And sometimes they send us money, and we hope that we could give other people that money as well. But you have to really abandon yourself. It's a calling, if you will. A lot of people pat me on the back and say, wow, this great work you do. And I'm like, it's a work of God. It truly is a work of God. I could never do this on my own. And the reason the St. Francis house works so well is because it's Christ-centered. If I was to do this just on my own with all my own ideas without a prayer life, I don't believe we would last very long. I just know. And if I'm having an argument, you put 5 guys or 6 guys in the house, there's going to be an argument or disagreement once in a while. And, I'll say to the guys, hey, you know who's running this house? And they'll say, yeah, you, Joe. And I'll say, no. God's running this house. I'm taking orders from him. And right now you have nothing to say. That's just how it is. Just look at the second commandment. Love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. That will resonate in your heart. There's always a way to help people. God always finds a way. There's an old saying that we used to say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it. Yes, you can. You wait for a hot day and you take the long way. And when you get him there, he'll drink it. And the same thing with Christ. There's many, many situations where young people, well, let's put it this way. The people that I work with, they don't have a dad. We live in a fatherless society. And so because of that, it's very difficult for them to look up to God as a man and get answers, So it lands on me. I'm the example. I have to be the example of that. And so God's asking me to do that. The question is, what is God asking you to do? I mean, if you hear his voice, harden not your heart. Go with it. He will not disappoint you. There's going to be some hard times ahead, the way the world is going. And the world needs more young people like you to get out there and have courage and have strength and make a commitment. Make a commitment. I was taking care of a woman. This was the first time I've ever done this in my whole career of working with people. She was 97 years old. There was nobody left in her family, and she needed help. And I knew God was calling me to that. And so I would go and help her every chance until she became bedridden, until she became so sick, there was nothing else she could possibly do but wait and wait and wait. And not too long ago, it was 10:30 at night, and she called me. And I picked up the phone immediately, not knowing, what the situation was. Maybe she was in danger. And all her family members were dead. They're all gone. And so I called her. I said, yes. I said, Gertrude, is everything okay? And she said, no, you have to come over here right now. She goes, I think I'm going to die tonight. We have to say our goodbyes now. And so it's 10:30 at night. I'm exhausted. I just took care of 8 guys. And like I said earlier, my schedule is a moving target. Anything can happen at any moment. I'm on call 24/7. I said, okay, Gertrude, okay. And I hung up the phone, and I'm saying to myself, 10:30 at night, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I can't do this while I'm getting dressed. This is really extremely difficult, I got to get dressed now. I got to get over there, thinking that there was really nothing wrong. But you know what? As I'm saying, I'm having a real difficult time, and this is really challenging. I put the key in the door, and I walked in, and I walked over to her, and she smiled at me and changed everything in 1 second. I said, are you okay? Gertrude, are you okay? And she goes, what time is it? I said, it's 10:30. She goes, AM or PM? She didn't even know what time it was. I said, PM. She goes, oh, okay. She wasn't going to die, and she knew it. She was lonely. She just needed somebody to hold her hand and tell her everything's going to be okay. That's all she needed. It was really that simple. And her whole demeanor changed at that point in time. I'm not sure who got more out of it, me or her, to be honest with you. But for me, it was a great opportunity. It was a great opportunity to bring Christ to her. And when she was getting really, really bad, and she kind of lost her mind towards the end, just before that, I would always make the sign of the cross when I saw her, and she would always make the sign of the cross when she saw me. We would always bless the room. And a morning that I came over there, the woman who was taking care of her said, Joe, she's not going to recognize you anymore. And I said, well, let's just see what happens. She goes, no, she's talking that all this other stuff's going on, dementia. I walk in the room, and the first thing I did was I made the sign of the cross. And the first thing she did was make the sign of the cross. She knew everything that was going on. Everything that was going on. Till the end. Till the very, very end. So all of this is a work of God. And it gives me and it would give you a sense of purpose. I mean, what are you going to do with your life? God calls you to this. It's not, when people say what a great guy I am, I usually tell them, hey, listen, don't try this at home. This is a vocation. This is something you get called to. And if God is calling, rather than like just jump in all at once, I don't think that's the best thing to do. I have a little advice. Take one step. Just one step towards this. And then you'll know whether to take the next step. That's what I've done. Sometimes I would take 2 steps. It's my personality. You take 2 steps. And then I take another step backwards. Then I take another step forward. And that's life. Things change. It's okay. It's okay. You walk with God, He walks with you. Again, I say that this is from the heart of hearts. This is a work from your heart. It's not from your head. There's no book that you can get that will teach you to be compassionate. I'm also a drug and alcohol counselor, and I went to school for all that kind of stuff. And I have to tell you honestly, I think the books are pretty good, but I never used them. I never really needed them. I just needed somebody in front of me to speak to. And 9 times out of 10, if you're speaking to a person who's homeless, I think the best thing you could possibly do is ask them their name and give them that dignity. That always works for me. Oh, by the way, what's your name? Danny. Well, Danny, my name's Joe. How'd you get here? What happened? I mean, I honestly, in my heart of hearts, really want to know what happened. Some people, we're dealing with mental illness. You'll know that right off the bat. Other people are victims. They're victims of circumstances. The young men that we get into the St. Francis house are victims of circumstances. They honestly didn't do anything wrong. They're just there. They're unloved. They're uncared for. And the only way to find joy and happiness is it's not the road that everybody else is on. I have a picture in my house where it shows a road going to the left and a road going to the right. And the road to the left, is full of people and dancing and music, and it's just like that's the one everybody wants to be on. Everybody's partying. And then there's one road over here with one person on it, and there's a cross at the end of it. And I usually tell people, if you're looking for me, that's where you'll find me. Take the road less traveled. What we're lacking today, I believe, is quiet, peace. And in order to spend time alone. And sometimes when you're spending time alone, listen, I have my prayer time in the morning. I spend the first 2 hours in prayer. That's me. You have to find time for prayer. You cannot do this without God. Again, this is a work of God. We're the glass. You need something to hold the water in. It's just that simple. And guess what? I had some boys at a drug rehab at one time, and I probably had a dozen guys in there. And I remember it was 11 o'clock at night. And I wasn't there as a counselor. I was only there as a backup because you couldn't get these guys into the drug rehab unless they had somebody to represent them. So I signed all the papers, and I got them in, just like that, And I'm not recommending that anybody should do this because I forged them. But I had to get them in. And I knew sometimes you just got to break the rules. That's just how I felt. And you know where I got that from? Jesus. And so anyway, I got the 12 guys in there. It's 11 o'clock at night, and I'm at a parent meeting. I'm not even a parent of these young men. And one woman looks over at me, and she says, Joe, I know why you're here. I looked at her. I said, oh, okay. She goes, no, I know why you're really here. I said, well, you care to elaborate? I'm in a room with 10 other people. And she goes, you're here because it makes you feel good. And I looked at her and I said, well, it's 11 o'clock at night. I haven't had my dinner. I said, the coffee that they offered us here was like mud. It was horrible. I said, I don't feel good. I don't feel good at all. Matter of fact, I feel horrible. But you know what? The young men that I brought in here, they feel good. That's why I'm here. That's the only reason I'm here. And I got home at 11:30 at night that night. And that never left me. That because I saw something in other people. Like I knew why her kids were there. That's for sure. She was an angry person. And they lacked, honestly, in this place, they lacked God. They actually had a meeting with me and said to me, Joe, you cannot bring God into the conversations with these young men when you're speaking with them. I said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. They said, well, we can't do that here. I said, well, I don't work for you. I'm here. I said, bringing these young men in here. Well, one of the boys complained. I said, well, I don't take advice from adolescents. You kidding me? I said, no. I said, listen, I promised God that I would do this. And so if you don't like what I'm doing, I can take all these boys out of here and go to another place. Of course, they wouldn't do that. I understood business. They were getting a lot of money to bring these guys in there, and the state was paying them. So they wouldn't want to challenge me on that. But they specifically had a meeting with me saying that you cannot do this. And I specifically said, you all should be ashamed of yourself as far as I'm concerned. You're not going to intimidate me. It's not going to happen. I'm bringing Christ to them. You're taking the healer, the divine healer, out of their recovery. You can't help them. You can't help them. Only God can help them. Anyway, they decided to leave me alone. As long as I was bringing other people in there, they were very, very happy with that, and they didn't want to, but they tried to intimidate me. And I saw it coming. Honestly, can't intimidate me when it comes to that. Never going to happen. Because like I said when we first started talking here, my work is a work of God. So I'm going to stand on that and stick with that. And he gives me the strength. And he gives me the courage and also the commitment. Without a commitment, you don't have anything. Prayer without works is... Okay? You want to leave a little question and answer maybe or something?
Thank you, Joe. Claps.
Praise God in all things.